Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. Many people wonder about the identity of the pharaoh during Joseph's time, known in Egyptian as Zaphenath-Paneah. He held the position of vizier, ruling over Egypt during the 7 years of plenty in the 7 years of famine, as narrated in the Bible. In this video, we will delve into Egyptology, the history of Egypt, and biblical accounts to unravel the enigmatic figure of this pharaoh from Joseph's era. Additionally, we will address a seldom discussed topic on YouTube, the pharaohs of Joseph's time, who were more than one. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your likes, and follow along with this video, the mysterious pharaoh of Joseph's era. The Egyptian narrative in the Holy Scriptures is intriguing, beginning with Jacob, Joseph's father. Jacob had many sons, with Joseph being the youngest at that time. Then came Benjamin, the youngest. Jacob harbored a special affection for Joseph, arousing envy among his brothers. They conspired against Joseph, selling him as a slave to Egypt. Jacob deeply mourned the loss of Joseph, but God rewarded Joseph's faithfulness, allowing him to prosper. Joseph was a righteous man, and his obedience to God led him from slavery to the position of governor of Egypt. However, before this success, Joseph faced various trials, including being unjustly accused and imprisoned in the house of Potiphar, an officer of the pharaoh. Nevertheless, God liberated him and elevated him to the second highest position in Egypt, second only to the pharaoh himself. Many people wonder about the story of Joseph, and a frequent question for readers of the book of Genesis is about the identity of the pharaoh during Joseph's time. However, to discuss this matter, it's important to understand that there was not just one pharaoh during Joseph's life, but several. According to Egyptology and biblical and Egyptian historical chronology, we need to analyze Egyptian chronological history to understand who these pharaohs were. By following the biblical timeline, we can identify them. Through the analysis of biblical chronology and Egyptology, we understand that the reigning pharaoh when Joseph arrived in Egypt as a slave was Amenemhat II. This pharaoh, Amenemhat II, had Potiphar as his general. Potiphar held the position of general under the rule of Amenemhat II. Born as the son of his predecessor, Senusret I, Amenemhat II ascended to the Egyptian throne after his father's death. His rise to power was marked by a smooth transition, demonstrating Egypt's institutional and political stability during this period. Amenemhat II was known for his interest in expanding Egyptian domains and consolidating his kingdom's power. He launched several successful military campaigns, expanding Egypt's borders to the south toward Nubia and to the east in the Sinai Peninsula region. These territorial conquests not only increased Egypt's wealth but also strengthened its position as a dominant regional power. In addition to his military conquests, Amenemhat II is also remembered for his domestic achievements. He oversaw significant construction projects, including the expansion of temples and the building of structures to improve Egypt's infrastructure. Under his reign, trade flourished, and Egypt's economy experienced a period of growth and stability. Amenemhat II according to was a leader dedicated to the well-being of his people, and his domestic policies reflected this. He implemented administrative reforms to improve governance and promote social justice. His administration was characterized by a strong centralization of power, which contributed to the political and social stability of Egypt during his reign. When Joseph was imprisoned, the reigning pharaoh was Amenemhat II, who passed away during his imprisonment. After approximately 2 years, Joseph was miraculously released from prison in Egypt. He then interpreted the dream of the next pharaoh, who, according to Egyptian and biblical chronology, was Senusret II, also known as Sesostris II. This pharaoh had the famous dream of the fat and lean cows, and the strong and weak ears of grain. Senusret II was the fourth pharaoh of the 12th Egyptian dynasty, reigning between 1895 and 1878 BC, which corresponds to about 3,878 years ago. Senusret II was the son of his predecessor Amenemhat II, who ruled when Joseph arrived in Egyptian territory. An interesting curiosity about Pharaoh Senusret II is that he was in power during the period when the monarch of Beni Hassan received the Semitic chief Abisha in his city. This event was celebrated in the murals of Beni Hassan, where the figures represented the physical appearance, physiognomy, and clothing of the Semitic peoples, also known as Hyksos in Egyptian, Hika Keswet. These murals provide valuable records about the appearance of the Semitic peoples, in this case, the Arameans, during their visit to Egypt at that time. During the reign of Senusret II, following the established practice of his dynasty, he served 3 years as co-regent with his father, Amenemhat II. In the first year of this period, a commercial expedition to Punt, on the eastern coast of Africa, was recorded on the Egyptian Red Sea port rocks. At the beginning of his exclusive reign, the fortresses of Lower Nubia, built by the king's grandfather, were inspected, and in the 6th year, the fortress of Annaba, near the Nubian gold mining region, was rebuilt. According to commemorative stelae and inscriptions, diorite, copper, and possibly amethysts were extracted at various locations in Nubia. Inscriptions in the Sinai indicate that the king's miners also operated there. Contacts with the Middle East, mainly with Syria and the Arameans, were also maintained, as evidenced by the presence of Aramean Semitic merchants, the famous Aramu, in a provincial tomb in Beni Hassan during this reign. The noble family in this location increased its influence through various mixed marriages with neighbors from the Middle East, mainly from Aramean tribes, but also from other Semitic peoples of the Middle East. This marked the beginning of a certain intermingling of native Egyptians with Semitic peoples. Something that may surprise some readers of the Bible is that the narrative of Egyptology suggests that Pharaoh Senusret II possibly died during the first 7 years of prosperity in the land of Egypt, according to the pharaoh's own dream. Then, he was succeeded by Pharaoh Senusret III, who was the son of Senusret II. A very interesting curiosity is that it was most likely Pharaoh Senusret III, son of Senusret II, who called Jacob or Israel to dwell and live in Egyptian territory. Another curiosity about Senusret III is that he was most likely the one blessed by Jacob because Genesis 47 says that Jacob blessed that pharaoh. Taking into account Egyptology, biblical chronology, and also Egyptology chronology, we can then understand that it was Pharaoh Senusret III who faced the 7 years of misery and various problems in Egyptian territory. Interestingly, we are told that during the reign of Senusret III, he faced various difficulties, described in ancient Egyptian texts as rebellions, riots, and confusion, which occurred because of those 7 years of misery in Egypt. These riots and everything that happened during the reign of Senusret III were consequences of his father's dream, Senusret II. In the book of Genesis, chapter 47, we find very interesting information about the famine of the 7 years. The shortage of food led the people to slavery. From verse 13, it is mentioned that there was no food in all the land, as the famine became even more severe, affecting both Egypt and the land of Canaan. Joseph collected all the silver in circulation in Egypt and Canaan, which was used as money in payment for the grain that people came to buy, and transferred it to the pharaoh's palace, who, in this case, was Pharaoh Senusret III. When all the silver in Egypt and Canaan was exhausted, the Egyptians pleaded with Joseph for food, as they had no more money. Joseph then directed them to bring their herds, and he would give them wheat in exchange. The people brought their herds to Joseph, and he gave them wheat and bread in exchange for horses, sheep, cattle, and donkeys. At the end of the year, they returned to Joseph and argued that they had nothing left except their bodies and lands to offer in exchange for food. Joseph then bought all the land of Egypt for the pharaoh, as the Egyptians sold themselves and their fields due to extreme hunger. Thus, the land became the absolute property of the pharaoh. Regarding Senusret III, verse 24 mentions that, however, all crops harvested should have 1/5 destined for the pharaoh, while the other 4 parts were for the farmers, to sow the fields and sustain their families, ensuring the food of their children. The whole people then responded to Joseph that he had saved their lives by favoring them at that time, and they agreed to be slaves of the Pharaoh forever. We can understand that, thanks to Joseph, the reign of Senusret III was very strong, even amidst 7 years of total famine and misery. Joseph was crucial for the prosperity of the Pharaoh in this difficult period. I hope you all enjoyed the video. May God bless you all, and see you soon.